We'll kick off. So look, welcome everyone. My name is Caroline Francis and I'm the Head of Marketing for Ambit. I'm sorry about all the distraction of the invites, but we'll try and make that as seamless as possible. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're really fortunate to have Steve Merchant, Libby Schultz and Andrew McCall joining us today to share their insights and learnings in their digital employee projects. And please excuse my background noise. My lawnmower men have turned up. Got to love level 3. Everyone's back at work, so I apologise for the background noise. Before we begin, there's a few housekeeping things to run through to ensure that everyone is able to hear clearly. If you're not speaking today, could you please turn off your camera and also your microphone? You should have automatically been muted, but if you're not, if you could mute, that would be amazing. We're recording the webinar today and we'll make it available to you after the session. So if you would like to share it with any colleagues or anyone else, you'll please do so. We've got a few questions we'd like to ask the panel today, but if you've got some burning questions too, please drop them in the chat and Tim will get to those through the course of the next 40 to 45 minutes. So now I'd like to introduce Tim Warren, who is the CEO of Ambit, to kick off our session today. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thanks very much, Caroline. And I trust everyone is doing well with their lockdown haircuts and getting out for occasional takeaway coffees and the like. It's certainly an unusual time, but that's actually what's brought us the context of what we're talking about today. In particular, the landscape of customer service has really changed just in the matter of a few months, and so we can't even have the face-to-face conversations. If we look back, I think it was 2 months ago, we had 140 people in a room, all talking about digital employees, and that's something that's simply unimaginable today. So people are pushed into different situations we'd normally handle face-to-face. And what's the impact it's going to have on customer service? That's what we want to explore today. It certainly pushed a rush to digital first channels and brought a lot of companies that were thinking they never needed to have an online or a digital automated offering. It's pushed what I heard someone say very well, it's pushed 5 years innovation probably into about 5 months. And we are seeing that very much so. So there was a recent study by American Express which said more than 60% of people actually want to solve their basic customer service issues through an online website, an app, or some kind of automated session, meaning that they like to talk to people, but they prefer to reserve that for more complex issues. They like to pick up their phone, they like to do something in an automated fashion that solves it in a very quick way. Another study found that 9 out of 10 consumers want to be able to connect through multiple channels, an omni-channel experience, seamless service across different methods of communication. So humans find that really hard. We can have a very deep connection with people, but it's hard to have access to all the information about that customer. But the key driver at the moment really is speed. It's about speed to value. So being able to help your customers fast, and from the perspective of people implementing potentially automated channels for customer service, it's being able to roll something out, make a decision today and be helping people next week. So with the world tipped on its axis, we think it's really increasingly important to focus on retention of customers and their health. And they're under immense pressure. It's not just what we're facing and what you're facing, but what they themselves are facing. And the fact that I'm sure that a lot of us today have actually got kids running around in the background. I myself, I'm a newly coming up to speed homeschooler of teenage boys. So that's pretty exciting. It's really important to make sure your teams have got really effective ways of managing that surge in demand, and you can't always scale people up to the ways that your customers need that support. So building agility into your business so you can act really quickly as the market changes is searingly important at the moment. Just to reference another study from Juniper Research, who do a lot of work in the area of automation, they talk about $8 trillion in cost savings from moving to automated conversations by 2022. And if I roll back to a year ago when they were first mooting these kind of numbers, people were saying, I think that's just too early. And now people are saying they're going to be doing it this year. So it's amazing how at first we think something's going to be a long way off, but all of a sudden those things are right in front of us, and we've had a global shift or global change that has brought that digital transformation right into today. So we're seeing this increase in demand for effective solutions right now. So a recent example of this is with our customer Hallensteins Glassons. They've experienced their busiest days ever with their digital employees, and it is actually just going up every single day. And that is not just a swap from one channel to another. We believe it's a permanent substitution as people move to a channel that gets them a faster and faster response. So before we kick off with the panel, who've been basically introduced, let me give a little bit more detail. So we've got Andrew McCall. He's a digital content specialist. He spent about 10 years working on digital experiences across both Spark and Tower Insurance. And in the last few years, he's branched out into chatbots, or we know them as digital employees, including Tower Insurance's Charlie. So Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tim.
We've got Steve Merchant. So he's a really experienced executive and founder. So most recently, chief executive and director and co-founder of Pet Doctors. I'm sure you are all aware of, which is New Zealand's largest group of animal veterinary practices. Steve's the chair and director of the NZ Vet Association. He's got a lot of experience in developing and implementing strategy and culture, new product development, and a whole range of really innovative channels. His most recent venture is Vet Chat, which features a virtual vet nurse, and it's going to be the latest digital employee. In fact, it's already been released as of a couple of weeks ago. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Tim.
Also working on the same project as Libby Schultz from Virtual Vet Nurse. She's a freelance copywriter. She's got a background in advertising, journalism, very much in the area of conversation, which is what we're all about, and communications, with particularly experienced in financial services sector. She's been involved with the development and the testing of the Virtual Vet Nurse right from the start, and so organising focus groups, testing, and a lot of the sales collateral, but particularly around forming the voice and the tone of voice around Virtual Vet Nurse's digital employee. So welcome, Libby.
Thanks, Tim.
Great. Okay, let's kick things off with you, Steve. So you're one of our newest customers. In fact, the person who's most recently launched a digital employee on our platform. So first, I'd like to congratulate you for launching a really innovative business in the current climate. I'd love you to share the forces that compelled you to undertake picking up a digital employee project, and in particular, the key steps that you went through when you were onboarding that virtual vet nurse employee.
Sure, thanks, Tim. It's certainly been an interesting 4 or 5, 6 weeks. I've lost track now, as I think most of us have, which has presented some significant opportunities to speak to the value of this, and a whole bunch of challenges as well. So I should probably frame my involvement in that I've always been interested in innovation and technology opportunities, provided they have a strong customer solution focus or a clear value proposition. And we careful not to just look at introducing technology for the sake of it. So I can see that, but with the panel, I appreciate the invite. I'm certainly no expert in digital employees and conversational intelligence platforms, but certainly seeing out more from the delivery perspective and learning a lot every day. The opportunity that I saw here was probably a mix of the drivers and trends within our sector, and then the environmental drivers and trends that we're seeing as well. So our sector is increasingly resource constrained. Internationally, vets and vet nurses and professionals working in veterinary practices are hard to get. They're not staying in practice. They're increasingly stressed. They're increasingly, the profession's feminizing. It's becoming more part-time. Continuity of care issues are a real problem going forward, coupled with the fact that the data and the amount of knowledge that they need to know is increasing exponentially, and if they or customers are just going to Google, it's overwhelming. Then when you look at the societal trends, which are well reported, and I think you've talked to them before, with 49% of people in some studies not wanting to interact with businesses by phone, not wanting to wait more than 20 seconds. A lot of front house inquiries, 80% of the same 20 questions. So when you bring those two trends of opportunities and issues together, a digital employee sits right in the middle. It's a sweet spot. And it can help take the strain off. And I guess it's a point I should make. We're not introducing virtual vet nurse to save costs. We're introducing a cost-effective method for the teams to actually add more value where they're trained. And so the last part was surprisingly just investigating whether there was a solution already in the market internationally. And while there's a lot of products on the surface that might look like an intelligent conversational platform, they're not. They're really just links to somebody on the end of the phone or a video. Give us your credit card number and we'll give you some advice. So we certainly saw the opportunity. We tested the concept on some close focus groups within the business and then some customers. And then the last part of our research was looking for providers and then commissioning proof of concept before we launch.
Right, thanks, Steve. I think the really fascinating thing, if I relate back to a conversation you and I had about a month ago when everything was becoming quite serious with the global economic backdrop, and we talked about, in some ways, a lot of people are connecting in a different way, and you did reach out to vet clinics and you found them receptive at that time. I think that's a really fascinating experience. Libby, if I can come to you, in your experience, who's best to be involved in a project like this?
Yeah, I think what I've found and what I've been surprised by is that it's actually quite a small team. The client side, obviously, there's all the clever people at Ambit that actually make it happen. But in terms of how we've rolled it out, it's really effectively just been Steve and myself in terms of the build over the past few weeks. So it sort of started, I think, just shortly after lockdown. He started, building the conversations, and it scaled up really quickly. And it's now live. So I was surprised by that, by the speed of it. In terms of who's needed, I think there's probably three main roles. So firstly, you want a project owner, so somebody who can make the business case, who will drive the whole thing, keep it going, just own it. Secondly, you need the subject matter expert to write the content, and ideally that would be somebody that knows your industry inside out, knows what customers are going to ask, knows the key messages that you want to get across, and will make it sure it's compliant, knows the regulatory framework of what you can and cannot say. And lastly, and this has been my role, is somebody to advocate for the user journey and the user experience. So I've gone, while Steve has written a ton of content, I go through afterwards or concurrently sometimes and check for the tone of voice and the user experience, making sure everything's flowing. Because at the end of the day, if that's not right, you're going to have problems. So really just those three roles. Yep.
Thank you, Libby. That's really interesting. So 3 roles and you managed it with 2 people. So good job on that. Okay, moving from a small company experience and getting something up and running in a very short amount of time, you talked about how you were surprised how that speed was. Andrew, can I come to you now? You've worked with Tower and large organisations. So what's been important and what was important for Tower in the early stages of working with a digital employee, which is called Charlie?
Well, the first thing we needed to do with Charlie was to find a place for it to sit, for a very well specified role for it, because obviously with insurance, there's a lot of products, there's a lot of different things that come into it, and you don't want to start by doing everything at a very basic level. So with Tower, we decided fairly early on we'd do car claims, and Charlie would answer questions about car claims, and that would be it. So fairly sizable amount of volume would still come through. A lot of people making car claims every day, but it would just be cars, no house, no contents, no travel or anything like that. Keep it simple, provide a really excellent experience for that. And then once that was up and running, people were getting used to Charlie, we could build on that as we did and built out into other areas, home, contents, things like that. So finding that niche, that starting point for the big organization was key for us to really get a good foothold and get people using Charlie and engaging with the digital rep.
Interesting. Thanks, Andrew. So it's almost like starting a human employee in a business where you give them a relatively small set of tasks and you let them get good at that. And as they build up confidence, as it were, albeit through a digital employee, then you start giving them new tasks. So start small and then evolve. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, very much that sort of thing. And also, as customers become more used to working with them, it's easier to introduce new topics and new subjects for Charlie to talk about. Yeah.
Oh, very good. It's interesting to note. So more than half of consumers recently surveyed by Forrester, I think it was 63%, said they're actually really happy to have that digital first interaction, as long as at some stage there's an option to move to a person if they've needed. And what did Tower do in terms of that if people aren't satisfied or their needs aren't met through the digital channel?
Well, we early on provided sort of options for them. So we weren't fully integrated with the live chat system at first. So if you wanted to talk to a person, you would have to go back to the page you were on, restart, and ask for live chat instead of Charlie. But we also provided options. You know, they could email, they could all those sorts of things. So yeah, it was just sort of providing some very basic options at first. But the idea was, if you went to Charlie, you were asking about, say, how do I make a claim, and then Charlie would provide the answer. So there weren't a lot of situations where people would need to go and talk to a live agent. Yeah,
right. Okay. No, thanks very much. So Steve, back to you. You started thinking about this venture last year. You've mentioned you've got an interest in really innovative channels and innovative technologies without letting the technology lead. So talk to us about why you selected presenting this virtual vet news through a digital employee as opposed to other methods of engagement.
Yeah, I think this was really, we made the decision that this was the best way to go forward quite quick early in the piece. Then it was a matter of iterating and actually understanding what the product should look like and what she should do, or he. But we felt we were trying to deploy into a fragmented SME market, and we needed something that was reliable but could be packaged with some personality and some emotional intelligence as well, which is essential for a fit in our sector, which does carry a lot of emotion. There needs to be a lot of trust, there needs to be a lot of humility, and people just need to know that they've been taken care of. And so we felt that the digital employee could be that interface between a customer query 24 hours a day and then the clinics who could pick up that conversational and those requests for the next day. So we felt it was the obvious choice, and there's nothing that I've seen to date that convinces me otherwise. Plus, a matter of, it's not if but when, you know, we will have these assisting businesses. The trick is, to date, you know, they've been out of the reach of small businesses. You know, relatively, they do need some driving, they need some investment, and certainly they need some iteration and some management. So we felt that it was the perfect spot that sits in the middle to create the solutions we're trying to do.
Yeah, okay, great. I remember you mentioning to me before, once you looked at the digital employee option, you decided that was essentially the only way forward. Do you want to talk through, you know, how you made that decision so quickly?
Yeah, I think we got into and it's actually testing the market and listening to, I remember maybe in a seminar that you attended a year or so ago, and it said, look at future trends. What are the really wealthy doing right now that everybody will be doing in 5 years' time? You know, and the really wealthy had mobile, you know, phone technology. The really wealthy have personal bankers. Now we all, you know, don't know what are personal bankers, but, you know, there's banking assistants, you know, personal shoppers. So we felt we wanted to create a concierge. So somebody that was available to sit alongside the clinic 24 hours a day and take care of a customer's problems and remember their details and sort stuff for them and say, it'll be fine, this is sorted, we'll confirm tomorrow, whatever. So once we built that that framework and personality and those drivers around the solution, the digital employee is really the only way we could do that.
Okay, very good. Okay, so that's an interesting one there. That concierge. So this is you've mentioned that a couple of times. It's not about replacing people, but actually augmenting what people in the clinic do.
Yeah.
Right. So access to there's a 24-hour aspects that they can do. Do you want to just tell us quickly some of the functions that people can do through your digital employee?
So basically, a lot of businesses are closed 24 hours, overnight, and we look at a lot of, and there's no market differentiation between businesses that are closed and just have answer phones, and yet, customers are increasingly wanting to sort things out when they get home from work. So at first, it's a point of engagement. It's sticky. It keeps a client involved with their practice. They can request anything, whether it be messaging the clinic, changing their files, making an appointment. I've got a problem, uploading photos of something they've seen, ending it off. You can imagine a customer that's noticed something wrong with their cat at night, or it can be referred to an urgent facility and maps can open and they can be given directions, or there can be the history given to the clinic the next day with some photos. You can imagine how engaged that customer is and the amount of advice that the clinic can give. It takes the pressure off the front of house, and every administrative task you can remove from the business gives the professionals within the practice more chance to add value and ultimately sales and better outcome to their core business.
Right.
So there's a twofold value impact: one, capturing and generating sales and leads and repeats after hours and during the day when the phones are busy, and taking the pressure off the teams in the clinic to do what only they can do.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so there's an interesting thing there, which is it's a recurring theme, which is allowing people to do the more complex things, because a vet is a high value resource, and you can move the workload of things like bookings and prescriptions and repeats onto a different factor. Okay, Andrew, coming back to you, one of the important factors in setting up a digital employee is the design of the actual conversation. You were closely involved in this with Charlie. Do you want to share your thoughts around designing a great conversation that's engaging for customers?
Absolutely. Well, a little bit easier for me since I had a bit of a background on telecoms, broadband help desk many years ago. But the key for me was starting by looking at the conversations that customers were already having with our claims agents at Tower. So I was reading the live chat transcripts. I think went through about 6 months worth of those to see what people were saying, listening to some phone calls as well. When they say it's recorded for training purposes, it really is. And seeing not only what customers were saying, but how they were asking questions and the sorts of information they were willing to provide up front. And then using that as the basis for what Charlie would say and how Charlie could guide them through providing the right information to get to the outcome that they need. So yeah, that was the big one for us. This came in handy, and also then once it's live, reviewing what people are actually saying to Charlie, because when people know they're talking to a chatbot, they may talk differently to how they would talk to a live agent. Some people do like to take the monkey a bit, and that's fine. That's all part of it. But paying attention to how they talk to the digital employee and then customizing the responses based on that. So not just having that initial framework and sticking with it, but refining it, improving it over time, a sort of very agile approach to things, which is great because you can make these tweaks and deploy them, and then the next day you can see them being used in conversations with customers, and you're getting that very quick turnaround, and it's really excellent to really hone down on these conversations and make them the best they can be.
I think you make a really good point there, which is that you get started. You mentioned that earlier. You got started quickly, and a little bit of the tower journey is you started in a non-integrated fashion, but then what you said there is quite critical. You actually learned what the customers wanted, right? And then you were very agile. You had a great success with implementing a new journey around the windscreen claims, and you did that in a very short amount of time. Do you want to just run us through how you did that?
That's right. Well, that was the Novus booking journey. So Tower has an agreement with Novus. You can get your windscreen replaced if it's got a chip and there's no premium, all these details. Initially, what we used to do was we provided a phone number that you called, it went straight through to Novus. You made your booking, they would come out and fix the windscreen. Fair enough. Not such a great option if it's 3 in the morning, you're driving home and you've chipped your windscreen. A bit like if your cat gets sick at 3 AM, you know, what can you do? So we wanted a better solution. They asked if I could make an email form or something that would do that, and I could, but I said, hey, you know, we've got Charlie here. Why don't we just do it through Charlie? And people can provide all the information they want. Charlie will then send the information off to Novus, and they can, you know, they can process it at their end when they come in first thing in the morning.
And how long did that take you to put that conversation together, Andrew?
The conversation, it was a fairly simple sort of call and response type thing where it would ask you a question, you provide the answer. It took about half an hour, I think, all up to figure out what we needed and then to build it in Charlie. Yeah, about half an hour all up to do that. And it's fairly quick process. We did refine it afterwards. You know, the initial journey was not what you would go through today. We've added bits in, and it now provides you with an email, you know, copy of your request and things like that. But yeah, the initial was very fast to get off the ground.
Yeah, right.
Testing and to get it through the security team to make sure we weren't providing, you know, opening ourselves up to abuse and things like that. So yeah, really great.
It's the same message there, isn't it? Which is get something out, get customers using it, and then refine it based on the way people use it. And Libby, you mentioned before about the user experience. You're a communications specialist. Can I hear from you too around the factors relating to conversation design that you involved for virtual vet nurse?
Okay. Yeah, I've kept in mind that writing for this is really, it's the same elements as a good conversation, any conversation. You know, keep it succinct, engaging, don't be repetitive, don't talk at people, just try and get that, you know, the back and forth. And I think, and it's getting the tone of voice right as well. I mean, we've got a section on, obviously, if somebody's talking about their new puppy, you know, you'd keep it lighthearted and fun and a bit of banter. But we've also got a section on euthanasia of pets. And so obviously you need to adjust the tone of voice when you're on that topic. So you can really kind of scale things up and down. And I think, as Steve mentioned, we really want to personalise the conversation because people love talking about their pets. They love that everyone thinks their pet is the funniest and cutest. And so if we give them the opportunity to upload those little videos or the photos, that's another bit of surprise and delight in terms of engagement. And also it has a function, we're using that sort of as a pre-consult. So, you know, Steve said they can send in a picture of the cat's vomit, you know, and the vet can look at that, and then when they come in, they can, you know, they've got that on hand. Yeah, so as I say, it's just the same elements of any good conversation and just being aware that you can, that you need to get the tone of voice right.
Yeah, right. So tone of voice and being able to change that dependent on the context. Right, that's a critical thing. Some systems, you know, Steve, you mentioned that some of the existing systems that were out there were relatively simplistic, and obviously in a conversation environment where you can have an understanding of the sentiment of the person, it must really help. We've talked quite a bit about that. It's very quick to realise value from this. For the majority of customers, they can get there very quickly. So I'll just relate an example we've got here. So Mercy Radiology were struggling to handle the growth of their customer inquiry as their business expanded, and so they introduced a virtual nurse to book people in and to answer questions. Within a couple of months, the successful answer rate went from 60 to 90% as Susie continually learned about what people needed to do to be able to interact with Mercy Radiology. The other thing they found is that a large amount of engagement, 20% of their engagement was after hours. We also found this with Vector, who had a significant decrease in the number of clicks through to their call centre. For a large company like Vector, that can make a substantial difference. 5% is a very large number. I think 30,000 calls saved, they estimated, in the time that they measured it. So Andrew, I'm keen to hear about you, about what Tower have done to pivot to deal with either seasonal changes, or if there's something like what we're seeing with COVID, what's the ability to move fast to react to environmental changes?
Yeah, with Charlie, it's been really great. Being able to train new utterances or new questions from customers as they come through means that we can react almost instantly when something goes wrong. For example, you might remember last year there was the massive hailstorm in Timaru. Giant hailstorms breaking car windshields and windows, and all sorts of terrible damage. We had an answer at the time for storm damage for people who had, you know, a hurricane had come through and knocked the roof off or something, but we'd never sort of accounted for giant hailstone falling from the skies. So we were very quickly onto that. Saw the headline came up on the news alert, had a look at what customers were saying, and saw that there were already people on Charlie saying, hey, you know, my windscreen's broken, my windows, roof's damaged, what can I do? We were able to train that immediately, get people linked up to the right part of Charlie, get the right answer, and get them heading off to make their claim or do whatever it is they need to do before they make their claim. So that was a real big win for us, you know, mainly because we had Charlie there. Charlie was there, could answer all those questions, get people sorted. It was also a big win for us early this year with COVID. So when the outbreak first happened in Wuhan, wasn't necessarily a big thing at the time because it was quite a small localized event. We had a travel alert for people that were traveling to China, and I think we got one question about it early on in that first month in January or so. So what we did early on was we just linked coronavirus or any mention of it to travel alerts, so people would then be sent to the travel alerts page, be able to see what Tower's statement was about travel relating to China. That was fine. And then as things got worse, we were able to expand on that. So eventually we gave coronavirus and COVID its own Charlie journey with its own customized, specialized message about what's happening, be able to provide a bit more information up front, still link through to the travel alert page at the end because it had the downloadable document that had all of our official on it. And then a little bit later on, when we actually got our own COVID response page up, we were able to update the journey once again, tweak messaging a little bit more, send people to the COVID page, which had a lot more information and also linked to the travel alerts and things like that. So being able to evolve the messaging and the conversations very, very quickly is critical in that situation, just to keep people informed and get them through to the area where they needed to be, because we had people who were overseas, at 3 a.m. were asking, oh no, I need to get home, or I'm sick, what do I do? And be able to have that there for them was a big win, as it were, at a very short time.
So you're, again, that's that same theme of customers sometimes have the information very early, and you're seeing it through the questions that they're asking. you're not going to pick that up on a static web page because there's nowhere for someone to go. They're not going to necessarily ring you up for the same thing in the same way. So during the process, I think it was late March. Now, I know Tower are a little bit ahead of the curve on this. Ambit introduced platform support for understanding COVID enquiries, and we made that available at no cost to all of our customers. You're ahead of the curve on that, Andrew. Did you pick that up originally through just reviewing customer conversations, was it?
It was a mix of customer conversations, but also seeing what was in the press and how the virus was taking hold in China and how severe it was becoming. So it was sort of a mixed approach to that, and also sort of covering the bases a wee bit just in case things got worse. We were having a lot of discussions at our end anyway. Being an insurance company, we are quite risk averse. So anything that could potentially go wrong, a group of people will get pulled together to discuss it just in case. And so we were a wee bit ahead of the ball for that reason as well. But it was also, we had a chance to do something quick with Charlie, so we took it. Yeah.
I've got another question, if we can just stay with you, Andrew. When you're making changes like this, you're learning from customers. You see something new pop up in a conversation. Do you go off and create a business case and understand ROI, or do you just do it because it's something that customers need? How do you approach that?
I would certainly don't do a business case since I'm sort of doing a lot of it myself. I can very quickly write up a conversation, and if it is something fairly simple, we can deploy it, make it live, or I can go and double check with the claims team or the product team or whoever the relevant people may be to make sure that we are providing the correct message. And so the ROI we can sort of look at later, but in terms of getting customers an answer now, that takes precedence a lot of the time.
Okay.
We can say something now, we can, if it's not 100% correct, well, we can tweak it later on, or we make it as correct as we can. The way that you can evolve a message over time is sort of the key with that. So you can start out with something simple like we did with COVID, and then as more information comes to light or as is confirmed, or we know what the position will be, we can build on it from there. So it's really makes life a lot easier to move in that quick way.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Steve, come back to you. When you kicked off, we did a proof of concept together with you. You trialed it, got feedback, and then you made that decision to move to production. Do you want to tell us about your thoughts behind that approach, and how would you do it differently, and what would you recommend to others looking at their virtual employee journey?
Yeah, I think it was basically a matter of trust. I would do things a lot quicker. I think once you've deployed and you can see, you can start iterating and you can see what the customers are asking, then and anything before that, if I'm honest about it, it was me proving to myself that the product would deliver. And the trouble, and I completely agree with what Andrew did. The mistake we made with a proof of concept, we had this vision for what our digital employer would look like. So we said, let's actually try and make a light version of that, which meant that we tried to demonstrate that he or she could do a lot, but nothing particularly well. It would have been much better to actually say she can do all of this, but we're going to create a proof of concept that is very good, but very narrow, and just delivers one conversational stream and outcome. And what did sell it and continues to sell the concept is the concept. And to back that up, a couple of trial scripted conversations, which you can do with a GIF or a video. So I think, I'm not sure whether we would go through the proof of concept again. I think we would probably either make it pretty narrow, very robust, or just do some scripts and user feedback. And to be fair, that's what I was told by industry players, including yourself at the outset, really, is that the product does get stronger with time. mean, we've been going for about 2 weeks now, and I can tell you that 12% of the, the conversations are triggered with COVID, and 18% are trying to make a booking, and we had no idea how that was going to play out 2 weeks ago. So really getting it out there, and the COVID environment is great because there's a real reason to talk about it, apart from the fact that everybody's distracted and stressed. But it's also a bit of a good news story that can come out, and hopefully, takes a little bit of the pressure off our employee having to be perfect at the outset, as long as there's some humility involved and a human can be involved pretty quickly. So probably the short answer is I'm not convinced. We probably lost 6 months going through the proof of concept stage. There was faster and better ways to do that, I think.
Okay, sometimes it's just a matter of getting yourself confident, and I guess it turned out that customers were very happy to use it, and you were maybe coming to that slower. Can I ask you, what was important to you when you're choosing a technology, or you obviously chose Ambit to work with? What were your thoughts around that? How you were going to launch this business?
Well, basically somebody that was aligned with the value proposition and the business model. Our business model is quite different to, say, CAR or in New Zealand. We're basically looking at an extremely fragmented market. There's 500 clinics in New Zealand, 2,500 in the US, 25,000, 2,500 in Australia, 25,000 in the US. They all treat Cocker Spaniels, Cocker Spaniels are Cocker Spaniels, Sure, there's snakes in Australia and there's Lyme disease in the US, but we needed something that was agile, that could move quickly and be scalable. And we needed a business partner that would give us a platform to do that. It had to provide a high end user experience. The human animal bond is, trust is critical. If we delivered a shoddy product and they lost trust, then that impacts the brand of the clinics that we're on selling this to. And ultimately too, as Libby's pointed out, this is actually a lot of fun. When you've got experts, well, not experts, but I mean, I know the content, I know the sector content. Libby knows the conversational design. We've had some marketing and feedback, but we wanted to be involved. We wanted to be able to get in there and roll our sleeves up in a platform. I can see an utterance come through that fails and I can fix it. And if it's used again by another customer somewhere else, a minute later it's sorted. So something that lets us get involved. And we've had no IT training. I don't understand what JavaScript is, but we needed a platform that we could be involved with and use without needing people with IT degrees. And less importantly, a provider that already had market traction and some validation. Probably less importantly because it is new, so it was more about meeting our needs than proof in the market.
Well, I'll just come to, Steve, staying with you, I'll just come to a question that's come through from Martin through the chat. He's asking how long it will take for a small tech support business to get started and then improve. Do you want to give your 2 minutes on what it was like, your experience for a small business getting up and running? And then I'll just talk a little bit to what the broader Ambit experience might be.
Sure. So I guess in my career, I've run large businesses, and alongside the large businesses, looked at lots of small startups. And so the small startups, you really need, they don't need to be overcomplicated. You need an idea. It's great if you've got a large business beside you that you can test the idea on, and that might be with team members or customers. But really, it's a matter of focusing on the end result and not overcomplicating it. And also, don't worry about how busy will we get if the scales. Worry about that when you do scale. Just make it right now.
Right. Yeah. If those occur, we can manage that. So I think we did it in a couple of phases with you, Steve, didn't we? I think we built an initial proof of concept was about 4 weeks. You had some trial time, and then what was the build phase after that? I think that was 6 weeks to.
The build phase, we really kicked that off in December, and then everybody disappeared for me mainly. And then we came back to it in late January, and the build iteration, even that build, to be fair, we shifted as to what we were trying to build as time went on. But by February, 5 weeks, we had the production model ready to go. And that basically was sitting there ready to go when the lockdown started. So there was a lot more time to spend on it, and then actually seeing, well, is this a threat or an opportunity? And as it turns out, it was both. It was a distraction and a frustration, but clearly an opportunity. So the production was 5 weeks. Could have been faster. If I was locked down over February, it would have been a lot faster. I think it was. I was the bottleneck.
Interesting timing, isn't it? Okay, Andrew, come back to you. I've got a question, another question that's come through from Dave. He's interested in who manages the digital employee and who's the person going through and looking at those historical trends and how people engage. Obviously, we've worked, Ambit have worked with Tower as well, but Andrew, you've led it on your end. Do you want to explain what that experience has been like?
Yeah. Well, I basically get to be the manager for Charlie. Essentially, every morning I start with a big mug of tea and a read through of all the previous day's conversations. So I will look at the conversations during the day, but what I'll do each morning is go through the previous day or the previous weekend on a Monday, and just read through each one, see what the conversation was like, how it flowed, did it go to the right place? Obviously the big thing, and also what the sort of the customer sentiment coming through was. Obviously there's feedback options in there for them to leave us very direct feedback, but you can see when you're seeing the back and forth between Charlie and the customer how very quickly how well it's going, and if it is going off track, and whether that's the fault of Charlie or if it's the fault of the customer, which does sometimes happen. But yeah, that's basically the big part of it. And then I can use what I've learned from that morning review to go and make improvements to Charlie, maybe come up with some new conversations if they're needed, or improve the existing ones just to really refine those and have them more efficient than they were before. A bit of bug fixing if it needs to be done with the way the conversations work. That's sort of it. You're your digital employee's own boss, really. It's great.
Thanks, Andrew. I think something I'd add in there in terms of what a platform can provide, as opposed to if this thing is being built from scratch in a code type environment, is those supportive insights or metrics that can be provided in an efficient way. So we have access to that, and there tends to be a varying model. Andrew, you've been a real leader in your organisation, and you've treated it in a way that's worked very well. Some customers are more hands-off, and we do provide information through to them in terms of giving them choice. But ultimately, it's a platform for customers to develop the experience that they want with their underlying users. So the other thing I'd note is that if someone like Andrew or Steve comes to Ambit and says, here's a question we're looking to answer, that's the kind of thing that we take into our development roadmap, and we say, hey, look, how can we further help people drive their own business? And so that's what comes to us, which we then allocate into our roadmap. And then when we deliver an improvement, it comes out to all customers. So it might be something that Steve has asked, but Andrew's going to get the benefit of it because we provide it out to everyone there. Okay, very good. Andrew, what would you do differently? What are your key learnings? If you were going to do this again, run another project, what would you do differently?
I would definitely integrate earlier on. So integrate with existing systems. So for example, Charlie, I would have more functionality from the get-go for people to make requests to actually start the claims process through Charlie. So not just direct them off to a form or direct them to a live agent, but let them do it on the phone. That's what I learned from our Novus journey, is people are more than happy to do it on their phone. If you've got the option there to take the photos, you've just in your car and you need to take a photo right away, that's great. You can do that, add it to your claim, all these little things to make it as easy as possible for customers, because they're happy to do it. I mean, if they didn't want to chat to a chatbot or a live agent, they wouldn't be using chat in the first place. They'd be on the phone trying to get through. So that would be my big thing, first of all. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Yeah, more integration with the existing systems.
Libby, any last words, observations from you, takeaways from this initial phase of launching a digital employee?
Yeah, I can see several advantages of a digital employee over other types of marketing collateral, and there are several, but due to time I'll just speak to one. I think in terms of as a sales tool, it feels very intuitive and natural, and it's more a conversation with a friend. So for instance, we might have a thread where somebody's talking about their dog that's scratching, and we can just sort of say, oh, well, did you know there's a diet that can help with that? They can say yes or no, they want to find out more. So it's low pressure kind of stuff. Yeah, it's friendly. It's just like, a friend might give you a recommendation. And and so we can see how a lot of our conversations are leading very naturally into sales, bookings, some sort of action that's really valuable. And most conversations will lead to one of those destinations.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So it sounds like really early you started, I guess, with, in some ways, it's the humanity and that empathy connection that you mentioned, Steve, earlier, that is really important when people are dealing with their pets. Well, I'd like to thank all of our speakers on the panel. We've had a handful of questions that have come through, but I am looking to wrap up now. We've just a little bit of a summary from what we've learned today, and there's been definitely a couple of themes coming across. So maximising some of those things that you can do in terms of starting small, start quick, but iterating really quickly seems to be important, and also understanding the key area, that little focused area where you're going to be providing value immediately. So it's the thing I've really noticed in the change over the last 4 to 6 weeks. People are now talking about this automation of customer service as this is not a nice to have innovation anymore. This is actually essential technology. And you've pretty much all said that the best approach is to start. And Steve, you actually mentioned, start and go straight into production. Start small, improve, iterate, and don't overthink it. A couple of people also mentioned, and Tao was a good example of that, starting and learning very quickly. Time to value is really important, so understanding if you have an ROI, so it's critical in your business, or is it simply about providing a fantastic service to customers? And finally, if you're putting something in place, ultimately it is going to save time and money and let people be more productive. So thanks everyone to appeared on the panel, and thanks everyone who's dialed in. I'll hand over to Caroline.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks again everyone for joining us today.